All right, in this video, we are going to do our first day of trigonometry. Now, it's going to be pretty simple. We're going to keep it really easy. But what we need to look at is some trig ratios. Now, these are going to show up a bunch of times, so we do need to learn them. And we'll learn more about them as we go. But we're just going to give you an introduction to sine, cosine, and tangent ratios. So the first one, this is pronounced sine because SIN is the abbreviation. It's actually SINE. Okay, if you were to write it out in a sentence, it would be sine. So we don't call it sin, we call it sine. So it's SIN, and then of sine of x is how we say that, is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Now, before we get into sine a little bit, let me just talk about how we label our triangle. So in a right triangle, there are three sides, and we label those three sides with three names: opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent. Okay, and let me see if I can try to show you why that is the case. So the hypotenuse is always opposite the 90 degrees, right? So that's always where we should start. If we're labeling our triangle OH and A, we're always going to start at our 90 and work our way opposite the 90 to get to our hypotenuse. So it's not always the slanted one, it's just the one opposite the 90 degrees. The opposite side is opposite the angle that I'm talking about. Now, here's the question. How do I know which angle I'm talking about? Well, I'm always talking about one of the angles that's not 90 degrees, and I look right here, and it tells me which angle I'm talking about. So I'm talking about this angle. So if you want, you can even circle it when we're just starting out here. So that's the angle I'm talking about. So which side is opposite that angle? It's that one, the one we labeled O. And then there's the A side down here. Okay, and so the A side is next to the angle, but not the hypotenuse. But if you get your H and your O in the right spot, then the A is going to fall exactly where you need it to. So H, O, and A. All right, so let's look at, so sine is a ratio of the sides of a triangle where it takes the opposite side over the hypotenuse side. All right, let's look at the next one. All right, cosine of x is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Now again, notice my sides are labeled the same way because I'm still talking about my angle x here. If I were talking about angle y, then my opposite side would be where the A is and the adjacent side would be where the O is, but that's not the case. We're still talking about angle x. So my cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so you can see that here, my adjacent side over my hypotenuse. And then my tangent, so I've got cosine. So again, if I want to type this out, cosine, okay? That's if we were talking about it not abbreviated. We call it cos sometimes, but cosine, sine, cosine. Okay, and the last one is tangent, okay? We abbreviate tan, so tangent, okay? So those are my three ratios, and my tangent is opposite over adjacent. So each one deals with two sides of the triangle. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, tangent is opposite over adjacent. All right, now if we write that all out, okay, so my sine, I'll just abbreviate as S, is equal to O over H, right? My cosine is equal to A over H, and then my tangent is equal to O over A. And what that ends up spelling is SOHCAHTOA. That's what people say to remember that are different trig ratios. SOHCAHTOA, SOHCAHTOA. Now I like to write it like this, so that way we remember which one is over which. But if you see SOHCAHTOA, that's what it's talking about. And we're just going to hang on to this. It would be good for you to put in your notes if you're taking notes. All we're going to do today is set up ratios. That's it. So you need to be able to identify sine, cosine, and tangent ratios and just be able to set them up. We're not asking you to solve, do anything else. If we could just set up ratios, we're going to be good to go after this lesson. So let's go ahead and try that. I'm going to hang on to this SOHCAHTOA. I'll put it down here. Now, what I want to do is I want to label my triangle. Before I start setting up my ratios, I need to label my triangle. And the better you get at this, the faster this goes. But sine of angle D, okay, cosine of angle D and tangent of angle D. So this one right here, that is my angle I'm talking about. Okay, so let's start by finding my H side. H is opposite the 90 degrees. So that's going to be H right here. So that's my h side. Here's my angle, so I'm going to go opposite that. And this is going to be my O side. And then my last side left over is going to be my A side. All right, so now let's go ahead and set up my ratio. So sine is O over H, so my sine would be 12 over 13. My cosine is going to be A over H, so it's going to be 5 over 13. And then my T is O over A, so it's going to be 12 over 5. So just like that. Okay, that's all we're doing. Label our triangle, set up our ratios. Let's do one more here. Notice our triangle is kind of in a different position here, so let's start by labeling our sides. First thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and find our H side. That's going to be right here. Then I'm going to figure out which angle I'm talking about. I'm talking about this K angle right here. So opposite K puts me here at 24. That's going to be my A side. I'm sorry, not my A side, my O side. Not paying attention. Sorry, this is real ugly. Let me do it this way. There we go. There's my O side, and that's my A side, right? All right, so I've got H, O, and A. So now let's go ahead and set up my ratios. So remember, sine O over H, so that's going to be 24 over 25. Cosine is A over H, so that's going to be 7 over 25. And then over 8, 24 over 7. All right, so that's as far as we're covering today. Know your sine, cosine, and tangent ratios. Be able to label your triangle, set up your ratios. If you can do that, we'll move forward in our next video.